Hi guys, it's Lou. Today I thought I'd do a video on some of the recent vinyl that I've been spinning. I guess in an effort to kind of change things up from either the vinyl finds or top 10 lists that I've been recently doing. I plan on continuing those, but this is an attempt to, delve a little bit more into my collection and playing the records that I actually do have, which I think is a struggle for all of us. We focus so much on the next purchases and what we want to get, and I'm the same way. And sometimes you got to pull back and focus on what you do have and play that, and so that's what I've been trying to do lately, and focus on stuff that I really haven't played a lot, or not that I've forgotten that I've had, but you buy it, you maybe play it once or twice, then you tuck it away, and then maybe you forget about it a little bit. So here's some of the recent vinyl that I've been spinning. First one up is a collection by a UK artist called Chris Farlow. Chris Farlow, for those who may not have heard of him, was or is an artist who had most of his popularity back in the 60s. As you can see from this release, the silvery packaging, he was on the Immediate label, which was a label that had a lot of artists who had sort of an R&B, Motownish kind of flavor, and Chris Farlow was similar to that. I guess he would be described as sort of blue-eyed soul. The Immediate label had some other great artists as well, most notably the Small Faces, who I absolutely love, and we'll get to later. The most famous song, from what I can tell, from Chris Farlow is a song called Out of Time, which is on this comp. It's a really good comp. I suggest that you check out some of his stuff. He's actually still around today, I think 70 odd years old. Still doing some live shows. This kind of music appealed a lot to the mods and those that listened to Northern Soul back in the 60s, stuff that I absolutely love. So I'd highly recommend. His stuff's a little bit hard to find. Couldn't really find any of his stuff on Amazon, but this was a find that I got maybe a couple years ago at a flea market. Under $10. Nice little greatest hits package from Chris Farlow. Sticking with the Immediate label, this is a compilation of various artists. It includes Chris Farlow and the song I mentioned, Out of Time. Also includes the Small Faces, early Rod Stewart from the 60s, P.P. Arnold, who was an American female vocalist who sang, who had a solo career but also sang with Rod Stewart a little bit with the Small Faces. Sam Cooke's on here, John Mayall, Bluesbreakers. Who else is on here? Oh, and Fleetwood Mac as well. Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac, to be, I guess, more specific, with that earlier incarnation of Fleetwood Mac, which was definitely a blues-based band. Speaking of the Immediate label, my favorite artist from that label, the Small Faces. This is a Small Faces best of that focuses only on material they released on Immediate, but has some of their bigger hits. The Small Faces had two self-titled albums, one on the Decca label and one on the Immediate label. So this one only includes the stuff from the Immediate label. That record I only have on CD. But there's 8 songs from that record, which I guess was their second full-length album, second self-titled on the Immediate label. And it also has some other big hits like Tin Soldier, Here Come the Nice, stuff from their third album, which was a sort of a psychedelic concept album called Ogden's Nut Gone Flake. I got this from Amazon on blue vinyl. It's for those of you who don't know the Small Faces, this is a great introductory to the band and you will not be disappointed. Great R&B sound from the late 60s, very much appealing to the mod crowd. Paul Weller's a big fan of the Small Faces, and it's too bad that this band only lasted a few short years before Steve Marriott, the lead singer, left and formed the band Humble Pie, while the rest of the Small Faces added Rod Stewart as a lead vocalist and Ronnie Wood on guitar, and had a lot of success. Though the Faces and Humble Pie had more success than the Small Faces, but in my opinion, this is the real good stuff. Continuing with the Small Faces, this is an album they released, I think was released in the US, and took material from their second self-titled album on Immediate, and also some singles that they had released around the time. Again, some of the bigger songs, Tin Soldier, Here Come the Nice. This was a Record Store Day purchase that I got after Record Store Day. The previously mentioned concept album, Psychedelic Masterpiece, Ogden's Nut Gone Flake. The title track on this is an killer instrumental song. It also includes some other well-known songs like Afterglow, with some amazing organ from Ian McLagan, and Song of a Baker is an excellent song. Lazy Sunday, another fantastic song. This is a picture disc, which I normally don't go for, but it was the only way to get this on vinyl at the time. This is the Small Faces first album that was on Decca. This is the reissue of it on Four Men with Beards label. Great, again, early Small Faces with that nice R&B sound. Highly, highly recommended. Prior to that first album, there was the songs that exist on this later compilation called In the Beginning. So this actually came after the first album, but it collected some of their earlier single releases, All or Nothing being the most well-known. My Mind's Eye is also a great song, definitely worth getting. Again, this was reissued later on. I think originally these songs came out on Decca, but reissued on Four Men with Beards. And last but not least, the Autumn Stone compilation from the Small Faces. This was released after the band had already split. To my understanding, they started work on a fourth album after Ogden's Nut Gone Flake, and then they went their separate ways. But this is a great compilation that has some songs from that period that were never released. It has some live tracks, and I suppose some other odds and sods that they hadn't put out on record. This is a double LP. Very worth having. Moving on to some other spins of mine, we have John Mayall. I'm a big fan of John Mayall. He's somewhat considered the godfather of British blues, and my first exposure to him really came through his association with Eric Clapton. And this album, which is the John Mayall Bluesbreakers with Eric Clapton, sometimes known as the Beano album because of the comic that Eric is reading on the cover. Great blues album. It was, my understanding, it was from Eric's playing on this album that garnered the nickname God in some of the graffiti that started appearing across England. Clapton is God. This is a fantastic album, which I'm definitely gonna get eventually on vinyl. Fantastic blues album. And as I was showing before, this John Mayall album is after that Clapton album. This is the Jazz Blues Fusion Live album. Fantastic playing on this, and the name captures the sound so perfectly because you've got some jazz musicians, including trumpeter Blue Mitchell. You got some wonderful trumpet, sax blending with some blues, harp, and phrasing and harmonica to produce an amazing. I wouldn't say it's as good as the Clapton Bluesbreakers album, but it's certainly up there as well. And there's John Mayall Turning Point, which is also a live album, which is in a much more scaled down group format, but again, some wonderful, wonderful blues from John Mayall. And again, this was after the Eric Clapton period. Another John Mayall album that I have on CD only, which I'd love to get on vinyl, but it's a tad expensive, is the Bluesbreakers Hard Road album. And this album, if you can see on the cover there, features another legendary guitarist, Peter Green, again, who went on to form the early incarnation of Fleetwood Mac, and John McVie's on this album as well. So the roots of Fleetwood Mac were definitely here. I think Mick Fleetwood also played for a short while with the Bluesbreakers. This is an unbelievable. The guitar, they thought Eric Clapton, after he left the Bluesbreakers, he couldn't be replaced, but Peter Green, wow. Some of his guitar playing on this is unbelievable. Which brings me to Fleetwood Mac's first album. Again, a lot of times referred to as Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac. Some great British blues on here. I highly recommend this album, Shake Your Money Maker, and some other wonderful early British blues. This is a compilation Fleetwood Mac album, again from that Peter Green area. It's called The Pious Bird of Good Omen. The songs on here that are utter classics are the original version of Black Magic Woman that was made probably more famous by Santana, but this version is killer. And also the instrumental Albatross, which from what I know made number one on the British charts back in the late 60s as an instrumental. It's a fantastic track. And last but not least, we have the last album made by Peter Green with Fleetwood Mac, Then Play On. This takes the sound a little bit away from the early blues sound of the band to include some different song structures, and it's a tragedy, the story of Peter Green through some LSD, some bad trips. He eventually was hospitalized, had bouts of schizophrenia, has made a comeback, but really has never regained the form that he had back in the 60s, which is a shame, because this guy was truly a legend back in the 60s. Okay guys, hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you again for all the people that have subscribed and make comments on the videos, and we'll see you next time.